Hi, my name is Sarah Jones. I had the opportunity to work for Sarah's Heart Child Care and Preschool. In doing so, I had the opportunity to work in the preschool classroom in our Huntington facility, where a lot of our underprivileged students were located. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the West Virginia area, but Huntington is not what I would call high class. A lot of people refer to it as the ghetto or the new Detroit. A lot of students that came there had a lot of underlying issues, and a lot of children that were there were born addicted. The school itself was one of the best in the area, but it was by no means hoity-toity or extravagant. Said education can pull you up from where you started. It can definitely open doors that you did not have open to you before. But there are still issues. Even with education, there are still bias in the job market. Gender, even though we have come a very long way, it is still an issue. Some companies won't say it. But if you look at the number of CEOs, how many of those are women? Not very many. How many of them are white old men? Quite a few. Education can do a lot. It definitely expands your mind and can definitely shed light on issues that the people in America, people around the world, are facing. Do I think that education is the end-all be-all of correction to these bias? No. Education is just a door. People have to walk through it for it to make a difference. I could sit and spout my beliefs and stomp my feet and cry and say it's not fair, because I've been in those positions before where I'm a female and my male counterparts were treated differently. I've seen that firsthand. I can scream it from the rooftops, but until people are willing to accept it and take in that knowledge and use that knowledge, I think it is just knowledge. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on what education can do. Education is to enlighten us, but we have to want to be enlightened. We have to want to use what we've learned. I can't tell you how many math classes I've sat in, and I can still not solve anything in geometry. Huntington Center and for the Teays Valley Center. These are two very different economical areas. They are very different in size, and they are very different in parentage. In our Huntington Center, a lot of the families were low income. They were on the state assistant program called LINK, which paid for their child care. Children that came from this background, a lot of them were addicted from birth. A lot of these children lived with a guardian instead of their parent. And a lot of the children there did not have what I would call a quality home life. That's not saying that every single child that came there had that, but there were quite a few that were. And what I mean is there were some children that came in and I literally would go out and buy them clothes because they did not have quality clothes. Their clothes were too small. Their parent couldn't afford it. I did that. Or some of the kids would come in and their clothes would stink because of where they were living. We had a student whose mom was bouncing around from house to house to house and did not have a stable place to live. And the child stayed with her at one of these homes and had an allergic reaction to the fleas that were biting her. These students that do have the lower income and students that come from these backgrounds, a lot of them want love and attention. Giving them love and attention, but also setting boundaries, you could see them take off educationally. Some of the students struggled with trust. They came from a very hard background where trusting someone wasn't easy, and it took time. It was definitely a struggle, and it, like I said, it took time because it wasn't like going into a classroom and they just love you. They had so much mistrust that I had to show that I was going to be there every day. I was going to show up for them. I was going to give them my love and attention, and that, any struggles that we face in the classroom, we're going to face it together. Education is the first step in gaining knowledge and learning anything. Knowledge is definitely power. Do I think education alone can create a stable and equal society? No. Because right now, with the education system that we have, education is not equal. It's not equally distributed or accessible to students. Changes that I think should be made: students should definitely have more access to free education. Children should have quality education, and quality education that is going to benefit them. In my experience, as I was graduating high school, my cousin was a freshman. She had to take trigonometry before she could graduate high school. And, seeing where she's gone in her life, she's never used trigonometry. I can say I'm 30 years old and I've never used trigonometry. So this was a class that was state mandated that they had to take, but was not utilized in the rest of their life. What was the point in taking that class that didn't create anything beneficial to creating a stable society or an equal society? It may have been equal in the sense that everybody in the state had to take it, but it didn't create any stability. It didn't benefit certain people's lives. I think those are things that need to be addressed in regards to what is actually being taught, how it benefits, and are we providing open conversations for students and staff. Burnout plays a huge part in education inequality. Teachers are at the forefront, and I personally have seen teachers come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, go-getters, spend their lunch breaks looking at Pinterest to come up with ideas for their students and projects. After work, they go and buy supplies to make sure everybody has plenty, and after a year or two, they are completely burnt out. Teachers get burnt out mentally, physically, and emotionally. I think it's really important to look at these aspects when it comes to education. Funding can definitely help providing proper pay for educators. Mental health check is definitely important. Your life should not revolve around your job. You should live your life. I can honestly say I've been in the position where I worked for a preschool. I worked from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. I worked 55 to 60 hours a week, and I just couldn't do it anymore. My body was exhausted all the time. My brain couldn't process anything, and then I would have to come home and do homework, and I would go to bed on little to no sleep and turn around and do it again. It's just too much. I think it's important to take a look at these aspects and create a better future. It's also important to look at inclusion. Yes, children with disabilities have every right to be in those classrooms, just as every student does. But that being said, it is not fair to always put that burden on a teacher. Yes, they are in ratio. Yes, they are meeting the standards in which the state or the federal government has established. But it can be extremely overwhelming when you have a student or multiple students with IEPs that you are trying to meet along with 20 other students, and it is just you. It is really hard to be in that position. I have been in that position, and it can make you feel like you are broken because you have not only failed as a person, but you feel like you have failed in every single aspect of your life because you cannot rise to these challenges. Funding plays a huge part in the inequality between schools, school districts, and states. I come from West Virginia. It's considered the poorest state in the United States of America. Our education system is not the lowest in the United States. However, it is still in the bottom 10% of states. Funding does play a huge part in this. It creates opportunity. It provides educators with the want. And I hate to say that everything comes down to a dollar sign, but in this case, I feel like it does play a huge factor in it. If you have adequate salaries for your teachers, they're going to stay in their job longer. They're going to try to find more satisfaction in it. When you give teachers and students the supplies that they need and deserve, those teachers and those students are going to be fulfilled. They're going to be able to approach the learning challenges adequately, while other school districts and schools are not, because teachers are underpaid, undervalued, they don't have supplies, and sometimes they have to buy supplies out of their pocket to be able to give students anything to work with. As an educator, I've had the opportunity to work in full inclusion classrooms. There are definitely pros and cons to having a classroom that is full inclusion. For example, I had a student, let's call him Joe. Joe had some severe delays when it came to cognitive abilities, speech, fine, and gross motor skills. But Joe was a very observant child, and I made note of this. Because he was so observant, I was able to use the other children in the classroom to model appropriate behavior. They were able to teach him skills such as sharing, sitting down for meals, and wanting to get involved in classroom activities, such as painting and circle time. Some of the cons that came along with having a full inclusion classroom, as an educator, I felt completely torn. At the time, it was me and an aide, and I felt completely overwhelmed. I wanted to be able to give my students who had IEPs and students that needed extra help my attention. But at the time, I had 20 children in the classroom. It felt impossible. It was definitely an uphill battle, and we seemed to make it work. I usually took on the children that presented more challenges, while my aide took on the other children. It didn't seem fair. I wanted to be able to give my attention to all the children, but that just was not possible. And it really was sad, and it hurt. It hurt not only the students' feelings, but mine too. I rarely got to interact with them like I wanted to. We had brief moments during circle time, but that was pretty much it. I think a measure that school systems really need to take into account with full inclusion classrooms is looking at how many students there are to one teacher. In my case, there was 10 students to one teacher. That's great, except for if you have 4 of those students who have IEPs, and you're trying to work with those 4 students on their IEPs, which is difficult enough, but then you have 6 other students who are kind of left to their own devices. It's sad, and it's not fair. It leaves children wanting more. It definitely disrupts classrooms at times when you have children that have cognitive issues, and when you have students that have behavioral issues, such as aggression. It definitely takes a lot. It takes a lot mentally and physically. And there are days that you walk out of there crying, and I think there definitely also needs to be emotional support for teachers in full inclusion classrooms when there are behaviors like that.